Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. My name is Kat Hobson. I am your host, the voice of Fate, as it were, and we have got something unusual. Well, for us. I have 2 guests tonight, and I'm very excited about both of them. Joining me first will be Tom Danheiser. He is the senior producer for Coast to Coast AM. I am a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of George's too, but I had researched and learned about Tom, went out and found him at the first Alien Con, which you might have heard me mention was kind of a zany thing, just because they had so many fans and nobody seemed to have anticipated that, but they pulled it off like champs and they've been great ever since. So I am very excited. Tommy, thank you for being here.
Hello, Kate. How are you tonight?
I am great. I am just excited to get to talk with you. We don't get to very often.
Oh, you're sweet. Hey, that Alien Con you just mentioned, you are correct, was just a phenomenal turning out. They had no idea what to expect.
No, I heard that they had planned for 3,000 and wound up with closer to 10. So
I didn't hear numbers, but what I did hear is that there was kind of some internal struggle between the producers and the guy there. I don't know. Something happened, but it was just they had no idea what they were getting into when they did that.
Well, and now they're doing like History Con as opposed to just the different shows from history. And I don't think that that's going to go as they expected either. So just because...
Well, I'll tell you, right now nothing's going to go until they let up on things and let us do some live stuff.
That's true. That's very true. And, you know, it really is a difficult thing because all of these people who are now doing the virtual cons, you know, it's a great concept. And I actually attended one the other night that was some of the Ancient Alien guys out there talking. And Linda, she's not a guy. But, yeah, it's just not the same. But at least they're out there putting forth the effort. So I appreciate that.
Well, in my opinion, you are right. It's not the same. And, you know, there's nothing like live. And I think once this all blows over, which I think it will, I believe that the universe takes care of things one way or another.
Yes.
And I think that once this all does blow over, I think that people are going to flock to live things.
Well, I think so too. And, you know, one of the reasons that it's still building is because people at the first opportunity are so eager that they just throw all cares to the wind and they're going to live experiences, whether it's football games or, you know, parties, or as we saw over the summer, spring break, and vacations, when it's not quite safe to do it yet. But, you know, they've been told it doesn't affect young people and they think they're immortal anyway. So, you know, it just is that, yeah, that's the age. So,
you know, I'd rather not get into the conversation of, you know, do we believe or not believe the numbers they're giving us and the news and all that. But I will tell you, I think that people are just fed up. It's just done. And I had said this like months ago. George and I were talking, and I said, you know what? You watch. People are just going to go do their thing. And that was very evident in the, I don't know if you know what the Sturgis motorcycle riders, they have.
Yes.
But those guys, they said, you know, screw it. They said, let's go. And they had 2,000 people or so a couple months ago.
Well, and amazingly enough from that, and I am going to throw a number out here, I saw a headline that said, you know, 2,500 deaths from Sturgis rally. And it was 3 days to 4 days after. And I'm like, that wasn't from the rally. You know, they had it already, or, you know, there's just something screwy in Denmark because it has a gestational period. And
well, and how many people have had pre-existing conditions that died? I mean, there's so many factors.
Yep.
You know, to figure out.
It's so weird, and I'm just so kind of over it.
So I'll tell you what, let's go uplifting from here on.
Let's do that, because you know what? I don't get a chance to talk to you enough, and I have you here. And even if it's for a bit, I am just thrilled that you're here. I am...
Well...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm honored that you would say that, and humbled and all that good stuff, and I'm glad to be able to have the time to spend talking to you.
Thanks. Me too. And that was same feelings. I would like, because I know, but I think that how you got to where you are is fascinating. I think that that's something people might like to know about you. When you get through, I'm going to tell you what part of that fascinates me.
Fair enough. Is some particular area you want me to start? I don't know what to...
Well, I do. I want you to start with your first radio job.
My very, very, very first radio job was in college at Pasadena City College in Pasadena, California. And what was very cool about this particular college was that most colleges, the college radio station is heard maybe a block away on a good day, on a sunny day. Well, KPCC, which was the college station, was heard, up. I'm not how familiar people are with the LA area, but heard down in San Diego, which is a couple hours away, heard up north a couple hours away. So it was really a radio station, right, that people could hear you. And so when I enrolled, you had to take a class where you were taught how to do things, and then you made a tape, and then from there the class voted on you, and if you got enough votes, you'd be able to get a spot on the radio station. And I was lucky enough that everybody else in the class liked my tape, and so I got to get a spot. So I was a big band DJ for about 3 years. The format was big band music.
I love big band music. Just saying. But that's how I learned to dance, was on my grandpa's feet to big band music.
Oh, you can't beat it. Come on, that classic stuff. You can't,
Yeah.
You just can't beat it. So I was lucky enough to get a show there, and we had, at that time, there was what's called a record library, which was just a big room with tons of records of everything from Count Basie to Ella Fitzgerald to, just everybody, right? Everybody.
That would be fun. And you actually were spinning discs, right? Like the big albums. Is that how that worked? Tom?
Are you there?
There you are.
Hello?
I am here. Yes, I am here.
Good. Okay. All right. So where did we leave off before that little glitch happened?
Well, I just asked if you were spinning discs, like the real albums.
Yes, like the real albums. So you walked into the record library, you planned your show on what's called a cut sheet, and then you pulled your albums and you walked in with your stack of albums into the studio, and the person before you was kind of wrapping it up, and then they turned it over to you, and off you went with your turntables and what they call cart machines at that time, which you played commercials on. And
that's so fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You learned a lot, and you got to hear some cool music if you liked the music, which I did, fortunately enough. So that was kind of my first job, to answer your question.
Well, and you volunteered at that job, right?
Well, you're going to college, so if you want to call that volunteering, yeah, it was school.
Right.
But get my first real anything I did in a commercial radio station was I volunteered at KLOS Radio, which is a rock station here in Los Angeles. And I volunteered there. I was giving out concert tickets and answering the phones and talking to people, and then I got a job in their actual research department. So my actual first paying radio gig was in the call-out research department, where we would call people at random and play music for them and get their get their ratings on if they liked the music or not. And those results would go to the program director of the radio station, so they would know what songs to play that people would like.
Well, that's interesting. I think that would be a cool job, because that was before caller ID, and the worst they could do was hang up, right? So
that's right. Well, you know what? I thought it was cool then. I thought it was really cool. You'd just sit in a room with about 4 or 5 other people, and you'd dial numbers, and you'd say, do you have a few minutes to take a music survey? And most people were really nice, and they just say, yeah, I do, or no, I don't. And then you'd play them these just little samples of music, and they go, yeah, I like it a lot, I don't like it. And then from that, they compile all these stats, so you know what is a more popular song than not, and so forth.
Well, how did you go from doing that to doing production?
Well, so I did that for a while, and then I met somebody there, and they had a position open in the what was called community relations at that time. And what it was is it was a department that put on live events that benefited a charity or a cause somehow that tied in with the radio station, right? So they offered me a job there, and I took it. And so we did things like, we put on things like pet adoption fairs and health fairs and just anything that the radio station sponsored, but also made money for charity. We did like a Christmas tree sale, things like that. So I started doing that. And then while I was doing that, a friend of mine was working at the talk station that was in that building, and he said, hey, they have an opening for a producer over at Premier Networks. So I went over there, and I saw what was going on, and they hired me for a weekend show. So I was producing a show on Sundays called The Motorized World of Leon Kaplan. It was a car show.
That sounds fun. And I actually...
Yeah.
Was that just a local person there? Because that name sounds familiar.
Well, here's the thing. He did a local show at the talk station I worked at with KLOS, but then he went over to Premier, which is a syndicator, which means their shows go out to tons of states, and he did a national show. So I knew him, from the local place, and I got the job on his show at the national place, so it was kind of cool.
That is really cool. Well, you've done all kinds of production, though, haven't you? I mean, you've done television, haven't you? And
yeah,
just wanted to make sure I wasn't putting words in your mouth, but
no, not at all. We've done pilots for the Sci-Fi Channel. We're currently doing a television show for Gaia TV, which is like an online service, much like Netflix, but they're more like they do yoga shows and things like that. But yeah, I'm one of the executive producers of a show called Beyond Belief.
Yes, and that is fantastic.
Oh, glad you like it.
I do like it. I like the people that y'all host there as well. So,
well, there's a lot of people. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please. There are a lot of people who...
There's a lot of people that have great material that people don't know about, and that can actually, that flows into my company I started, Danheiser Wagner Entertainment. I was thinking to myself when we started this company, I was thinking to myself that there's so many people out there that have like great material that we don't know about, because only so many people have the big names like Greg Braden and Wayne Dyer, who's not with us anymore, and people like that, that you hear the name and you go, oh yeah, Deepak Chopra, things like that. So you hear the name and you're like, yeah, I know them. But there's so many people out there that do really cool stuff. So I thought, you know what? Why don't we hold live events and let people actually get to know these people? And so, that's what we do with my company. But now, of course, because of COVID, nobody's doing anything live, so we're kind of on hold as well.
Right. Well, I just think that was such a great idea. When I was researching and I found that, I was just kind of like, wow, this is brilliant. Because people love to learn new things. And people who are doing cool things love to share that. I bet you have any number of people who are just thrilled to participate with you.
Well, yeah, we do. One of the series that we do is called an Eat and Greet Luncheon series, and we do it at a local restaurant here in Los Angeles. And we'd have crowds of people that would come back. People would come back again and again. The same people, little old ladies or nice old guys or middle-aged guys or whatever. Just really nice people that kind of look forward to having a function to go to every couple of months, So, yeah, we did get repeat people, and we even had we've had a couple celebrities come to them, actually. We had, I don't know, this probably goes way back far, so I don't know what your demographic of people listening is, but there was a show called the Donna, there was a show called the Donna Reed Show, which actually was before my time. I don't remember the show. But one of the guys that comes to our lunches regularly is Paul Peterson, who was a child star there on that show. So, we'd have people from like the studios, because out here in Los Angeles, near the restaurant that we do that at is Burbank, California, and Burbank has like Disney, and they have Warner Brothers and some studios there. So people that worked at studios would come, and just some really cool people, and it was just like a function, you just kind of socialized, and we played a few games, and then we had a speaker, whether they were talking about parapsychology or tarot cards or ghosts or finances or whatever. We just had these really cool people that I've come across and do these little talks, and I'd MC the event, and we'd give out a few prizes, and so it's a lot of fun, and we'll continue to do those as soon as things clear up here.
Well, I tell you what, I would attend something like that. I love learning about people, and especially with your area. I know that you've taken them some other places besides LA, if I'm not mistaken, but your area is so perfect for finding those people who have been in the industry. I know that, well, we have a mutual friend, Rick McCollum, and every time that he is talking about, golf or whatever, it's always with his foursome are like icons. It's just kind of, because, I don't do a lot of horror that freaks my brain, but it is, which is just a good laugh for everybody when they find that out. But it's so interesting because you have.
Did you say horror? Did you say horror?
I don't really care for horror.
You're going to love the little surprise I have for you later.
Cool beans. I love surprises anyway. But, and I trust you. So that helps with that. So, but you have people that are not from the beaten path who are still iconic in their field that you can pull from. And it's kind of a surprise when you get to talk to people like that. So I would enjoy something like a luncheon to do that.
Yeah, the smaller events we only do here in Los Angeles, but the bigger ones, like with George, where we do the live shows on stage, those are a lot of fun, and we do those around the country. We do them at all our affiliate cities, and unfortunately we had to cancel our Asheville show this year, our Houston show, and just recently our Everett, Washington show. But normally we do 3 to 5 live shows a year, and they're kind of Saturday night theater shows, and people come into the theater, and it's a 3-hour show, and we have a band, and George sings a few songs. We have some really great guests, and so yeah, they're a lot of fun.
I live in an affiliate town. You should come to Birmingham.
Well, we can't go anywhere right now.
No, I know. But once you start making travel plans again. Well, that's a great concept.
Always a possibility.
Cool beans. I won't write that down, but I will take it to heart. So I'm good with that. So,
all right. Very good.
I was talking with someone when I was mentioning that I was going to have you on, and they were very excited because they said, man, that guy's Rolodex, that would just be astounding. And I hadn't really thought of that, but I thought, wow, that would be astounding, because truly everybody who is involved in anything anomalous, and even those who are not, want to be on Coast to Coast AM. Is that true?
Well, I would think it's true, and not to sound the way it sounds, but I mean, it's really, really, honestly, I will tell you, and I've worked in this stuff for a long time, it's all about Joe Tenori. I mean, he is just so popular, and, people really like him, and it shows in the numbers. And yes, this is a huge, huge show. It's at any given time, there's about 3 million people that listen to this show. And that's in, I think we're up to about 615 cities in the U.S., Canada, Guam, Mexico. So, there's a lot of people that listen to this show. So, yeah, if you've written a book, or if you're, you want to do radio, you do want to do this show. Yes, that answers your question.
Well, I know that when you invited me to come on, I was so flattered and a little nervous, but it was a fantastic experience. One thing I will say, you were talking about George, is that he is just a very gracious man and the consummate professional.
And I think that's one secret of the radio show, is that you're not, you listen to enough radio all day if you turn on the radio where guys are yelling and screaming and they're, blah, 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 and then, they're giving their opinions. And I think one of the secrets of this show is that, we just put out the material. We don't claim to back it or necessarily be into it or not. We just, say, look, here's a witch. Do you believe what she's saying? Here's a parapsychologist. Here's a money man. Here's a guy we call the human computer. So we just put it out there, and you just decide if you want to listen to it and if you like it. And that formula seems to work.
Well, it works very well, because when I go back through, because I'm a coast-to-coast subscriber, and I think that having the opportunity to go and learn about these people, because, I go there looking for guests sometimes, because some of the people that y'all have on are so interesting, and some are a little bit more, what's the correct, controversial? So
controversial.
And I am always interested. I love learning. That's a show to learn from.
I thought you were going to use the word whacked out.
Well, no, I would not do that, because even when someone is, it's
you know what? It's Kate. It's not that they're whacked out. Kate, it's not that they're whacked out. It's that, they just believe a different thing than most people, than mainstream. They just have a way different belief in a path that they're taking, I guess. And, that's part of the charm, right? Of just listening to people and deciding if you buy it or not.
Well, yeah, when I first went to Contact in the Desert, there were a lot of people who were kind of out of my wheelhouse. I had not been exposed to some of these ideas. And it was such a learning experience. Not to mention that summer I got to hear George. I got to hear, well, crap. I love when my brain goes wrong. Eric Von Daniken. I got to hear him lecture like 6 times throughout the course of that summer. And I had...
that was
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, that was when it was still in the desert, right?
Yes. No, it was the first year at the resort.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah,
because
I
went everywhere that summer. But I had so many opportunities like that, and to, be so scatterbrained that Contact was overwhelming. And just because of the learning. But it was neat. And that's when I learned that George could sing.
It's just kind of cool because, you listen and you see so many people that, they make you think. You may listen to someone and say, you know what, they're full of it. I don't believe this. I don't buy this. But you know what? You're still thinking about it. You're still thinking what they're doing. Then you may meet some people that go, wow. They make you go, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yes. I did a lot of that.
So Yeah, so being open-minded is very good. You don't have to buy everything and believe everything, and you shouldn't actually. But at least to be open-minded and to be open to receiving some information, to process it and see what you think about it, I think is a good thing.
Yes. Well, it's good to have your mind open, just not open enough that your brain falls out, because you have to be open to experiences so that you can learn and ascertain what resonates with you and what doesn't. That's all it is. You just have to be willing to give ideas a chance. I do need to take a second here to let people know y'all are listening to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Because Tommy has a short time frame, we're not going to do regular breaks right now. So, there you go. But,
there you go.
Well, I've only got you for a little bit. Now, I
will stay as long as I can until I have to walk out the door. Okay?
I understand, and I appreciate that. Now, I have another question for you, because this is where I started. But have you ever ghost hunted?
I just lost you. You there?
I am. Have you ever ghost hunted?
Have I ever done what?
Ghost hunting.
You know what? I'm missing your words right now. Ask me the question again.
Have you gone ghost hunting?
Oh, yes, I have. Probably one of the best memories I have is we went to a place called, I think it was called Penn State. It was an old, dilapidated prison in Pennsylvania. And they're very, very cool, man. I'm telling you. You walked through these tunnels, and you saw these old jails, and we saw a cell where Al Capone was at one time, and you really walked into this place really feeling like there's something eerie here. I mean, you really did. The ambience was just there, and it was pretty creepy. And then I think another place I remember is it's called, I don't remember the name, but it's the jail where Shawshank Redemption was filmed.
Eastern State Penitentiary, or Mansfield. Yeah.
Mansfield, that's it. And, man, they took me in there. Woo, it was just me and like two other guys walking around, and pretty damn creepy. I mean,
yes.
I walked up the second tier ledges by the jails, and then I had them. They put me in the actual place where the hole was. Remember when they put Tim Robbins in the hole, and they put me in there, and like as soon as they closed the door, I said, "Let me out."
Yeah, that solitary area is just off the chain. I love that location.
Yeah, it was awesome. So those are the two that really stick out in my mind. But yeah, that answers your question, I think.
Well, that's cool. If you ever take a hankering to do that again, let me know. Because there's another place in Ohio that one of our hosts owns. And her jail was featured on the Portals to Hell show with Katrina Weidman and Jack Osborne. And it is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I actually was on that show because I had such extreme experiences there, but it is really an active place. So if you decide that you just have to be somewhere and you're in Ohio, I'll take you. But,
well, the fact that you use the word hankering, which I don't think I've ever heard used out here, is good enough to get me to say yes. But, I know Jack Osborne and have worked with him. He's a great guy.
He is. He actually got touched in that jail while they were filming that, and it's the first time he had ever been touched on an investigation. The reaction said it, too.
He and his partner, Peter, we have a development deal with, and they're just really great guys. They're just fun, and they love the material, and just really into it. So they're a lot of fun.
I bet, yeah. I just enjoyed the little bit that I was around them. And, well, that whole crew, it was it was an experience. I've never worked with such professional people ever. And they were all very, very young. So Lori in chat says she'll meet us there. So it'll be great. Now we
fun.
have we'll work it
Go
out.
ahead.
Well, we can move around some. We have a question in chat. And April would like to know, have you done a show on end of the world prophecy? Because so many are talking about it right now, like flat earth kind of things.
Hello, April. And yes, absolutely. We have, and we will do more. A lot of people do think that we're in end times right now. And it's, I find it easy to see how people would think that when you look around, the way, the country's divided right now, and how there's, just, again, not trying to get too political, but there's just so much hate right now. And, there's for the most part, I'm a big fan of police. My father was a policeman, but there are bad apples, And so just all this stuff, though, has created just this atmosphere. And then with COVID, where you could think, you know what, man, and there's fires in Los Angeles and just, the whole bit. So I see how people could just go, this is it, man, I got to get my stuff together because, this is end times. But I don't think it is. My personal belief is I don't think it is. I have a belief in the universe, and I think that the universe kind of just takes care of things one way or another, and I think it will continue to do so. And that's why that's where I find the strength to remain positive in this so COVID environment where you can't go anywhere, where you can't do anything in certain places. And so yeah, April, I hope that answers your question. But we do shows on that, and we'll continue to do shows on that.
Well, I have a question, because I am not used to George, Coast to Coast being on from 10 until 6. Is that live that whole time frame?
No.
Okay.
No, we'd be dead.
Yes, you would. That would be exhausting.
We are live from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Pacific time, and then we replay the show from 2 to 6 Pacific.
Great. Because when I went to go check my my local network's information, I was like, there's no way. How is this happening? These people will be passed out on the floor. But I'm glad that it's not, because my husband said, well, because he leaves the house at 4:30 or 5. My husband was like, why are they on? Because they were on, at midnight. And I said, well, there you go.
Why would anybody leave their house at 4:30 in the morning? Can you tell me?
I can, because he is an early riser. He's in bed early too. But when he gets up, he just takes off. He goes and he gets breakfast, because he would rather go and get coffee and eggs at McDonald's than eat my breakfast, I guess. I don't know. It might have to do with his spouse. But
doesn't that mean if he gets up at 5:30, you get up at 5:30?
It does. But because all of our dogs get up, and we have 4 dogs. Well, you know that. But when the dogs are up, you don't stay in bed, or you get pounced on. But we own a business, and he gets there before our guys get there, and he gets everything ready for them. So
okay,
it keeps him.
Well, a lot of people love morning time. There's a lot of people in the population that love morning time.
I don't know that he would do it by choice. Actually, he would, because when we're on vacay, he does that too. But it also keeps him, it messes him up, because when we go west, it's so much later. He plays poker. And, when we go, I leave him in Vegas for hubby daycare, and then I go do whatever event is happening around there. And he loves it, but it really messes with his playing, because he has to build up to change his time zone for himself well before we leave Alabama to go there. So he has to start shifting. It's hard.
It's funny you mentioned Vegas. I'm planning a trip with my brother in a month or so, and I had to tell him just the other day, I said, look, just so you know, I'm not getting up before 11. Don't call my room, So a little bit of boundaries there.
Well, you have to have them. I mean, period. You have to have them. But what do you think? I know that you were talking about, your belief that the universe is going to take care of things. And I agree with that. I don't care if it's the universe, the creator, whatever you want to reference that as. I think everything happens the way it's supposed to. Even the horrible things, there's something to come out of everything. And it's going to be a positive. You just can't see it in the moment. But what are your thoughts on the afterlife? I mean, do you think this is it? Do you think we go on?
No, I definitely do not think this is it. You know what? I was raised Catholic, and I went to Catholic school, and a lot of that stuff, stuck with me. I do believe there's a God, and you just look. I mean, I'm telling you, like when I drive, if I'm just in the car and I look up and you see these different cloud formations every day, and you look and you go, how could there not be a God? I fly a lot, right?
Right.
So, when you're flying above the clouds and you just see these blue skies and these puffy things of gas, you're like, come on, someone did this.
Right.
And so I do believe in a creator, and I think there's some sort of afterlife. You listen to the experts, you listen to people like Daniel Brinkley, who's died and come back many times, and, they have some things in common. Sometimes they don't have things in common, but it seems to be a thread where there's like a light. And then you listen also. What I find really fascinating about the afterlife is the people that have died and said things. Like, I don't know if you know who the comedian Sam Kinison is.
I do.
But when he had his car crash coming back, I think it was from Laughlin, he ended up in the arms of I think it was his brother's friend, and you can look up his story. And I'm paraphrasing now because I don't know it exactly, but he had looked up and he said, no, not yet. And then there was a pause as if somebody was talking to him, and then he went, oh, okay. And that's not the only story of people. Steve Jobs from whatchamacallit did the same thing,
Apple, yeah.
He apparently heard some voices, and so, I find those stories really fascinating because, you can't really script the last few minutes of, when you're here on Earth and when your soul leaves your body.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I definitely think there's something beyond this, and I don't think that we should be in a hurry to get to it, but yeah, there's something else.
Well, yeah, the time, your time is your time. And
yeah.
I think the continuum gets messed up when you interfere with that. But then I get, it's so broad because then I'm like, well, maybe that was the time continuum. Maybe that was that person's, due date or whatever. But it gives me pause when I see that someone has been murdered or someone has, killed themselves. It's just like, I don't understand that because I think
No, nobody does. But what's I'll use the word cool for me. It might not apply to everybody, but what's so cool about that stuff to me is that we don't know why it happens, but it happened for a reason. And when we go, we're going to find out that reason. We're going to find out what's there, what's waiting for us. Is it all love and rainbows? Is it, just normal life and you come back? We're going to find out. And so that, that little thing, that and the word hope, I love the word hope because I think it just it empowers you. It gives you energy to face things that you don't necessarily want to do sometimes. And so the afterlife, the word hope in your life, things like that are important.
I agree. Everybody has those times in their life that they don't really think, that they don't see the path through. But the hope is what allows you to continue through the difficulty. Because you just feel
100%.
like this is what's going to, there's a reason I'm going through this. There's a lesson to be learned. And my dad used to tell me, you're just the strongest person. I was like, well, I'm pretty tired of being such a strong person. I would like to lay down and rest for a little while, but that's just how that goes. Well, we have lost. Oh, there he is. Hello there. Fancy meeting you here. That was a surprise.
Did the lamest thing. I went to clear my screen and I hit the hung up button on you. I hung up on you on radio.
That's okay. We'll talk about that later.
Nothing personal, but what you were saying, is totally true. And what's really great about life is that what's inside you, they can't take away from you. No. Your memories, your things you think about, they can't take it. They just can't. And so you can be, downtrodden. Things can be going bumming. But if you pull inside of you and you go to your hope and your things that you have treasured in your mind, I think that's just awesome stuff.
I think so too. What?
All right.
Go ahead.
You sure you want me to go?
I do. I want you to say what you were going to say.
I was going to say, you want to play Test Kate?
Oh dear. We can do that.
I thought we'd have just a little fun. It won't be long and it won't be torturous, and see if people at home liked it or not. And it's very simple, so we'll see if you can do it, okay?
Okay.
Now, not everybody knows this stuff, and some people forget, but we're going to test your some sort of knowledge. I don't know what to call it, but okay, ready?
Okay.
Kate, tell me the name of the scariest place in Disneyland.
That teacup ride.
No.
I don't know. I have Disney World.
It's the Haunted Mansion.
Well, that was too easy. Or that was too obvious.
Well, you didn't get it, though, did you? Okay.
No, I didn't actually know you had one there.
I know that there's people listening to this going, come on, these are too simple. What's another name for a spirit board?
A Ouija board.
Very good. Tell me, in the movies Nightmare on Elm Street, tell me Freddy's last name.
Krueger.
You're doing well. What was the name of the hotel in the movie The Shining?
Well, I know it's the Stanley. I don't know if it was another name while it was there in the movie.
Give me a guess.
The Roosevelt.
Okay. No, it was called in the movie, it was called the Overlook Hotel.
Oh, okay. I actually have seen that movie.
Okay. Kate, what kind of mask did Jason wear in the Friday the 13th movies?
Hockey mask.
Good job. Name a type of alien that is also a color.
The greens. The grays.
Which answer are you going with? Grays, you are correct. Tell me what MUFON stands for.
Mutual UFO Network.
You're doing a lot better than I thought. Tell me.
Thanks.
I know. I knew that. I didn't want that to sound like it sounded. Tell me who is Dr. Hannibal Lecter?
Oh. I don't know his name. But he's very famous. He does all kinds of other things besides that, but he is a creeper in that movie. I don't know his name,
What
though.
movie? What was the name of the movie?
Silence of the Lambs.
Okay, we'll give that one to you. Yes, he was the doctor in Silence of the Lambs. They called him Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
But I thought you wanted the actor's name.
It was Anthony. Gosh, now you got me. I didn't write it down. Anthony. People are listening right now, going, "Come on, come on!"
They're putting the answers in after we get them.
Okay,
Somebody
so
put in
they'll
what
tell
the
you.
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins. That's exactly who it was. Yeah. Okay, so now finish this sentence. Casper the what ghost?
Friendly.
Okay. Last question. Tell me who Pennywise is.
He's a clown with a red balloon.
And don't say the band. He's the clown with the red balloons.
Right.
All right. Since we can't take a poll,
in it, right?
we'll give that one to you. Okay, cool. Okay. Well, you know what? You're awesome. You missed. Let's see here. You missed only 2 out of. Hold on. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 out of 10. You get an A+.
Why, thank you. What do you mean you were surprised? That was not that big a deal, was it? So, that was fun, actually. Did you hang up again?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. So I remember you specifically telling me a few weeks ago when we were talking about this interview that I said I was going to do a little quiz with you, and you said I'm not good at that stuff. I specifically remember you saying that, so that's why I didn't think you'd get some of these. But very good, very good.
Well, when they're fun and they're just kind of sprung on you, that's okay. So I like that. Especially considering that a lot of that was horror, and I don't do horror.
That's another thing. Yeah, that was it. I'm kind of surprised you didn't get the Haunted Mansion, but we'll give you that one.
I knew that Disney World has a Haunted Mansion, but I didn't know if Disneyland did. So.
Oh, sure.
But I like all of their stuff, actually. But I do think those teacup rides are kind of weird.
Isn't that where you can spin yourself?
Or if you have somebody that is just riding with you, like my father used to, they spin you. Like the tilt-a-whirl rides and stuff. And
yeah.
I love spinning, but I don't like spinning to the point of illness. So,
yeah, that's probably no fun.
No bueno. Well, what you got me tickled. So it was called the Overlook Hotel. The Stanley was. Well, I had no idea. I just recently got to go out there like a year or so ago, and Aidan Sinclair was performing there, and
in Estes Park.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool! Yeah, it's the real name is the Stanley.
The Stanley.
Yeah.
I'd driven up there with my daughter, and I didn't realize that it was, further on past Boulder. So she lived in Denver at the time. But that's a cool place, and it does have a creep factor. It's a shame they don't let you investigate anymore, officially. Officially.
I haven't been there, but I do hear it's pretty cool to go to, so maybe I'll make it up there at some point.
Yeah. Well, the stairs are beautiful. There's spirits, I think, around the stairwell. But it's cool. I like places that are off the beaten path, even though that one is, famous and notorious. I think it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. So. By the way, if you're if you are a horror fan or you like scary stuff, I can't really say who it is right now, but you should listen the 2 hours we have before we do Ghost to Ghost on the 30th.
Right.
There's a guy that wrote this really great book about a haunted place, and it's going to be a really fun, fantastic couple hours. So I suggest for people that are into that kind of stuff, listen if you can.
April 30th, the first 2 hours.
April 30th. Well, I want you to listen to all 4 hours, but yeah, they'll be on the first 2 hours. So it'll start at 10 p.m. Pacific time.
Cool. Well, that is midnight here, so that'll be a good time of day to be listening.
Indeed, it will.
I really miss when I used to work at our amphitheater, because after shows, I would listen to almost the full show. Yeah, because I'd start when I was on my way home, and then I'd run in the house and get it on in the bedroom, and that didn't sound right, but get the show on in the bedroom. And so I got to hear almost everything. We're going to talk
about stuff like that.
Well, it just kind of took me by surprise, because I thought, oh, I actually said that. I should clarify that. Probably made it worse clarifying it, but
maybe. But it made it a lot funner clarifying.
Well, what is your next thing? Because I know that you're always busy. I know that you're always planning. What is the next project that you think you're going to participate in?
Well, good question. We're going to relaunch our website at the end of the month, and with some reworked dates for workshops and things. So we're just going to reschedule everything till after June of next year and see how things fall into place. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do that by the end of the month for my company, and then as far as Coast to Coast, we're still planning our live shows for next year, and it's tough because I have to nobody knows if things are going to be open or not. So all I can do is pick dates that are far enough down the line that I think everything will be open, and start to plan these live shows. But it does make it tough because, some people are saying, not till, 2022, and some people are saying next March. So who knows? I don't think anybody knows. I think it's,
I don't think
the
so
governors
either.
Control this stuff. The governors of the state are controlling this stuff, and I know a lot of people that don't like the governor here. I know people that do like the governor here. Same with Washington State. Every state, you do or you don't like your governor, but they're controlling it. So this is a long way of answering your question, but we're just trying to plan stuff the best we can. Probably the newest project next year is, I think we're going to do another CD. It won't be a charity CD, but it'll be a 10-song CD, probably with George singing some songs.
That would be so fun. I would buy that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be our next project. But I gotta. It's hard because you can't get a handle on the live stuff, and that's what's really just a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And so until things open up, we just don't know.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up with all of that, because, like I said, Birmingham's an affiliate city, and I will be first in line saying, "Come, let me buy you dinner." And
Kate, you're always such a treat to talk to, and I loved meeting you when we first met. And yeah, you know what? If Birmingham's happening, you'll be there, I am sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We're at the top of the hour. I can't believe so much time went so fast, but I had thoroughly enjoyed you. Thank you.
Oh, you're sweet. You really are sweet. And thank you, everybody who listens to Kate's show, and thank you if you listen to Coast to Coast. And I hope that you've had a fun hour here. And thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being had, as it were. So we'll talk to you next time. Maybe we can connect again, because you are so interesting. But
that's nice of you to say. And yeah, as long as I have time, if I have time, I'm totally into it. So thank you very much for having me, and we will definitely talk soon, okay?
Absolutely. And
Take
now,
care.
you too. Thank you. And now we
Go
are.
ahead. You have one more. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
You're
okay.
You're in your next guest. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
I'm not. I'm doing my news break. So we take a 5-minute
Bye-bye.
news break. Bye. And we are now going into our top of the hour news break, as you may have heard. And we are going to hope for some good news, because heaven only knows we need some. I am positive that things are going to come back together. We just have to get through the next few weeks and see what happens, because how much we're not going to ask. We're not tempting the universe. But anyway, here's your news break. We'll be back on the flip side of this with Kris Newby, who has written the book about bug-borne illnesses being designed that way, called Bitten. See you on the flip side.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. Senate confirmation hearings get underway tomorrow for President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Amy Coney Barrett. In prepared opening remarks, Barrett will focus on her family and say that policy decisions should be made by political branches and not the courts. It's the start of 4 days of hearings on Barrett to fill the seat left vacant by the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. NPR's Susan Davis has more.
The hearings are moving ahead under highly unusual circumstances, just 3 weeks before an election and during an ongoing coronavirus outbreak roiling Washington. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has been adamant that the hearings continue, despite 2 members of the Judiciary Committee testing positive. Senators will be able to choose whether to participate in person or remotely. As a precaution, the committee has reduced the number of people who will be allowed to attend the hearing. If the week goes smoothly for Barrett, Republicans appear to have the votes locked down to confirm her to the Supreme Court before Election Day. Susan Davis, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump is claiming he no longer has the coronavirus and has stopped taking medication to treat COVID-19. As NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports, Trump's comments come as he gets ready to get back on the campaign trail tomorrow.
In a wide-ranging interview, Trump told Fox News he, quote, beat the virus.
Not only that, it seems like I'm immune, so I can go way out of a basement, which I would have done anyway, and which I did, because you have to run a country. You have to get out of the basement, and it looks like I'm immune for, I don't know, maybe a long time, or maybe a short time. It could be a lifetime. Nobody really knows.
Questions remain as to how much and for how long someone who was infected with the coronavirus has immunity. The president's physician, Sean Conley, wrote in a memo on Saturday that Trump is, quote, no longer considered a transmission risk to others. However, he did not say that Trump has tested negative for the coronavirus. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News.
And Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden campaigns in the critical swing state of Ohio tomorrow, with stops in Toledo and Cincinnati. In Louisiana, utility crews fanned out across the southwestern part of the state, restoring electricity in the wake of Hurricane Delta. Hundreds of thousands are still without power. This as residents started to return home to assess the damage. Roads are lined with debris and houses are missing roofs in an area already devastated by Hurricane Laura in August. All this amidst a pandemic. Governor John Bell Edwards.
I know that there are people who are fatigued by these disasters and emergencies. I will just remind you that the COVID is not going to go away because we get tired of it.
Edwards says the storm is blamed for at least one death, an 86-year-old man. The remnants of Delta are dumping rain now in the mid-Atlantic. This is NPR. South Carolina Senate candidate Jamie Harrison has raised $57 million to unseat Republican incumbent Senator Lindsey Graham. The money raised in the third quarter shatters a record set by then Senate candidate Beto O'Rourke in 2018, and it brings Harrison's campaign total to $86 million. Graham hasn't released his financial record from that quarter yet, but he told Fox News last month he was being killed financially. Graham, a strong ally of President Trump, is facing his toughest re-election campaign as he fights for a fourth term. Massachusetts ranks as the best state for women and Louisiana as the worst. That's according to a new analysis from Georgetown University. As NPR's Sarah McCammon explains, the report examines the status of women in all 50 states and the District of Columbia.
The Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security has developed a new ranking system that analyzes the well-being of women based on factors like access to parental leave, representation in government, and protections from violence. The report finds wide-ranging gaps depending on where a woman lives, with the top-performing states, Massachusetts and Connecticut, scoring roughly 4 times higher than the bottom 2 performers, Mississippi and Louisiana. The Georgetown study compares data across U.S. states and also to other countries. For Black women in New Jersey, the maternal mortality rate was nearly 4 times that of white New Jersey women and worse than the maternal mortality rate in Iraq. Sarah McCammon, NPR News.
And I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Was Tom Danheiser a hoot or what? I just think that man is brilliant and a lot of fun. So, and I'm glad that I didn't completely flunk the test because it was a possibility with there being horror topics in it. I don't do horror, even though a lot of my friends are monsters. So, I am excited because my guest tonight is just brilliant. She is an award-winning science writer. She is just brilliant in her research. She has finished a book called Bitten. I just don't even have words for this. She went into this, and the information that she shares in this book is about the weaponizing of bugs with, bug-borne diseases. And it was intentional. So, given the environment that we live in now, I thought this was very appropriate, but her book stands on its own. If this book had come out 5 years ago when nothing was happening, it would have still been amazing. So, I am so excited to introduce y'all to Kris Newby. Kris, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Kat, for the invitation and for your introducing me to your very curious listeners.
Well, they are curious, and you're going to probably get a lot of interesting questions as we go through this, because we already have a comment that says, "Oh, wow, this is going to be good." So no pressure, no pressure. But genuinely, when you started to research this information, did you anticipate the path that you would follow?
Oh, absolutely not. I was a Silicon Valley tech writer and marketing person in Palo Alto, California, right near Stanford University. And I started out as an engineer in the beginning of the computer era. And so that was my path. And then in 2002, both my husband and I, we took our sons to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, and we were bitten by unseen ticks, and we came back to California, and that started my interest in tick-borne diseases in a big way, because we came back, we were sicker than we'd ever been before.
Oh, wow.
And it took a year, 10 doctors, and $60,000 to get diagnosed with 2 tick-borne diseases that probably would have killed us if I hadn't been such a dogged researcher into what was really going on.
Well, thank goodness you were. That's frightening. It's actually terrifying.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. But what were your symptoms at your onset? Was it anything that presented as a normal illness?
Well, it looks a lot like the summer flu, and you could say today it looks a lot like the initial COVID symptoms, where you have a high fever and you have muscle aches and crushing fatigue. So in the beginning, you really couldn't tell it between the flu and COVID, but anyways, what happens is if you don't treat these tick-borne diseases right away, they can go into chronic form.
Yes.
And it can cause all sorts of symptoms. So what we found, we went to the doctor and together, because we were sicker than we'd ever been before. I had to crawl on my hands and knees to get to my bed a week after we got back from Martha's Vineyard. So we went in and they said, well, that's just a virus. It'll clear on its own. Come back in a week if you don't get better. And we came back in less than a week because we said, this is no drill. We were 40-something-year-olds. We're really, really healthy and athletic, and we're super sick. And they said, no, I just called the infectious diseases person. It's just the flu, a virus. Come back later. And then we came back in less than a week. No, we're really, really sick. And so that was sort of the pattern of the next 10 months where, and because I'm an engineer and I'm keep meticulous records on everything, all the 10 doctors that we saw during that 10 months of being undiagnosed, I said, hey, we went to Martha's Vineyard. It was the number 2 spot for Lyme disease and other bad tick-borne diseases. Shouldn't you test us for Lyme disease? And they all blew it off. They said, Lyme is a really rare disease. And so finally, after when we got to like Dr. 8, that was at a large academic teaching center, they could tell we were super sick. So, 10 months into untreated 2 dangerous tick-borne diseases, that's Lyme disease, that's a bacterium, and babesiosis, which is a malaria-like parasite. So my husband and I both had like chronic fatigue symptoms, Alzheimer's symptoms, arthritis symptoms, like twitchy muscles and dysfunction in our arms. Like my husband couldn't even pick up a drill or a pencil. His hand was so messed up. And then we both had brain fog, so I couldn't do simple things. Like I would get, I had middle school kids. I would get to a traffic light and I'd look at the lights, red, yellow, and green. And my processing time was so slow, I couldn't remember what the colors meant.
Right. Oh, gosh.
And then we had ear-to-file symptoms. So we were so sick, and it was so insulting that all these doctors refused to test us for Lyme disease, which is the number 1 vector-borne disease in the U.S., because they said it was so rare. One of them said, oh, it's such a rare disease, it would be like winning the lottery for both of you to have gotten it on the same vacation. So,
well, that's not a lottery you wanted to win, though.
I know, that's the worst lottery. No one ever wants to belong to the Lyme Club.
No. I have friends who suffer from that. I'm in Alabama, so we have a lot of ticks that, we get to dodge. But, I'm just going to go ahead and put out there that one of the reasons that I was so interested in Kris's information when I first heard about her is my mother-in-law died of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. They thought she had the flu. They never treated her for anything but the flu. And after she passed, she was still in her hospital bed, and her daughter walked by and saw the rash on the bottom of her feet and started demanding a test.
Oh my gosh, that's the most deadly tick-borne disease, and the rash on the palms of your hand or your feet are like a symptom that anyone graduating from medical school should recognize. So that's appalling for me to hear. And then I'll just jump to the chase, and that is our U.S. military during the Cold War actively experimented with Rocky Mountain spotted fever as a potential lethal biological weapon.
Wow, it would have been effective.
It was very effective. I mean, I have a link in my book to a study at Ohio, a university in Ohio that did an aerosol test where they would mass produce the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. They would in a vat, and then they would freeze dry it, make it aerosol particles, and then blow it over these 67 monkeys. And most of the monkeys died within 4 days. Wow. So it was incredibly effective if you wanted to spray that over a battalion, a military battalion of your enemy or a town.
Well, how did you evolve? Well, we weren't through talking about your treatment, but we'll get there. I'll save that question.
Okay, so at the academic medical center, finally they tested us for many, many diseases, and finally they agreed to test us for Lyme disease, and I tested positive for Lyme disease, and then they fired us both as patients, saying that's a bad test and it doesn't mean anything. And so I made them do it again, and it came up positive again, and they still fired us, and they said, we really don't have the tools to treat people like you, and that they thought it was all in our head. We were hypochondriacs. So that was a change, a pivotal point in my life path, because I said, I found a doctor who's experienced in tick-borne diseases. The minute she saw our list of symptoms, she says, absolutely, you have tick-borne diseases. She tested us for those, Lyme disease and the co-infections, and both of us came up very positive, and she began treating us. And, within a few months, we were feeling so much better. And, we started on the path to wellness. And that was when I realized the information that the medical doctors were reading in their medical textbooks or getting online with, prestigious medical societies, it was all wrong. So somehow the information on these diseases, the well of information had been poisoned. So that started me on a crusade. I said, well, all we need to do is just do a documentary, and then they'll see that these people who say they're suffering from these chronic tick-borne diseases, they're real people. They're people in your neighborhoods. They're, nurses, doctors, neighbors, the person at your coffee shop. They're normal people. They're not hypochondriacs. There's not an epidemic of mass hysteria around people who don't want to go to work. There's a real disease process going on here. So that's when I started working on this documentary. And, 3.5 years later, the director, who's Andy Wilson and Marin, and I released this film at Tribeca Film Festival. That's in 2008. And it made its way and became an Oscar semifinalist a year and a half later. Yeah. And so it was a great way to spread awareness and help people get a second opinion, because a lot of times people would take the test for Lyme disease and it doesn't work in the first month, and the doctors wouldn't know that, and they say, you don't have Lyme disease. And they'd go on and get really sick.
I'm sorry, that's just so frightening.
It is. It is. I would say that was the worst year of my life, that year where every day we'd wake up and we'd get sicker and sicker, and no one in the medical establishment seemed to care or feel the sense of urgency we did.
Because they weren't the ones sick.
Right.
And, what you said about it's not people just trying to lay out of work. These are people who are suffering truly from an illness. I mean, I'm so glad that you went from being ill and then pretty much victimized by these doctors to a treatment plan, to wellness, to doing the film. The film is amazing. It's called Under Your Skin, right?
Under Our Skin.
Under Our Skin. Yeah. And it is something you should check out. You should check it out. Now, you're not only prize winning for the film, you also won a Nautilus Award for investigative journalism. Was that relevant to the book?
So the book Bitten, which came out a year ago in hardbound and came out in paperback at the very end of June. So it's won 2 book awards this year. One is a Nautilus for investigative reporting, and then it won an International Book Award for narrative nonfiction. So narrative nonfiction is you take really dry nonfiction facts and you weave it into a story. Yes. So what Bitten really does is it first of all starts out with my family's story about Lyme disease, which really answers why I care. And then then it weaves that story with the scientist who discovered Lyme disease, who is Willy Bergdorfer, who came over from Switzerland in 1951 and immediately joined the biological weapons program in the U.S. military. And it goes through his life, and it really traces it from when he was a young scientist, and he was putting dangerous diseases inside of fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes so that the military could drop those infected bugs on our enemies, and it would be the perfect stealth weapon.
Well, it would be the perfect stealth weapon. It worked on you.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
Disabling. And it has a confusing set of symptoms. And it, instead of, a lethal weapon like a nuke that would kill people, and for every person you kill, it takes one undertaker and he buries you, and that's the end of it. When you have a chronic disease that's been weaponized, then it ties up all these healthcare workers, and it slows an enemy's economy down to nothing because everybody's sick and tired. So that was the objective of the program. And, in my book, I found an eyewitness of someone who worked for the CIA that dropped infected ticks on Cuba right after the Bay of Pigs fiasco.
They actually released it?
Yes, they filled the ticks with an unknown dangerous disease, and the person I interviewed opened 2 boxes of ticks and shook them over Cuban sugarcane workers. And that was part of a larger program that the CIA and the military were running called Operation Mongoose, or the Cuba Project. And the goal of that was after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, where the American military was shown up because there were so many leaks in this invasion of Cuba that made us look bad. There was a major revenge program that went on, and the goal was to oust the head of the country, Fidel Castro, by undermining his economy, and there were hundreds of assassination attempts on him.
Well, that lasted for quite some time, I believe.
Yeah.
The trying to get him, because, man, he was tenacious. Nothing they did got rid of him. And, it's just amazing. It's just amazing how we go into, what a civilized society we are, right? And yet we actively try to create havoc in the world with one of the most horrible deaths that you could have. That's just not the way that people envision the U.S., certainly not during that time period. But again, that was a different time, because that campaign was not going well on any front. So they were probably just trying to find anything to get a leg up. But it's still inexcusable.
Well, that's what I felt like when after I finished the film. It was 3.5 years of filming and editing, and then it was 1.5 years of sort of taking it through the indie documentary film festivals, and then, the marketing effort for the Oscars. I was exhausted, and I was still sick while I was working on the film. And after I finished the film, then I did another dose of treatment of antibiotics, and I finally got well. And then I started working for Stanford University as a science writer, where I worked for almost 10 years. But after I got better, I told my husband, I'm done with Lyme disease. I'm going to pass the torch to someone else. I've given my pound of flesh. This was exhausting, and I want to write about happy things at Stanford instead. And then exactly 2 weeks later, one of my documentarian friends called me up and said, I just talked to the discoverer of Lyme disease, Willy Bergdorfer, and he told me the most amazing thing. He said he was assigned to investigate all the people getting sick in the 70s for this thing that would eventually be called Lyme disease. And he said, Willy Bergdorfer, the discoverer, told me that he thought that the outbreak was caused by something that he worked on in the 50s that was a weaponized bug of some sort, without giving details. So when I heard that, I did a deep sigh and I thought, oh my gosh, I just so want to I'm healthy now. I want to get back to a normal life. But I thought, if this is really, really true, it's a crime against humanity. I mean, it definitely violated our biological weapons treaties. And if it really was, this outbreak was due to an accident, people are still suffering from it. And and this explains some of the things that during the research for the film couldn't be explained. Like, why was the Centers for Disease Control so secretive about everything related to Lyme disease? Why was the research controlled in a very tight circle of researchers? And why did these academic researchers say, absolutely, people are not getting sick from Lyme disease? If they say they're still sick, then they're hypochondriacs or they're suffering from the aches and pains of daily living. So there was those kind of questions. So when Willy Bergdorfer, the guy who had the most to lose by confessing this, because he got the credit for discovering this new disease, and if he's saying it's all based on a lie, that he didn't really discover it, that he recognized it from the biological, then I have to say, this is someone who knows what he's doing. He had advanced Parkinson's, but that's when I launched the research for Bitten, and I had no idea it would take 5 years and it would be this hard to get this information. But after I got to a certain point, I said, this is an important story and no one has it, and I need to get it out there.
Well, kudos to you for that, because a lot of people would have walked away. Just because of the difficulty of the topic. And especially having experienced it, I believe that probably provided more of your motivation than you anticipated.
Yes, because
that you were able to stick with it.
Yeah, because I knew how bad the disease was. And the disease almost destroyed our family. It was hard on our marriage. It decimated our finances. We lost a lot of friends, because when you're sick for multiple years, you can't socialize or take other kids to the soccer practice. Yeah. You're shut-ins.
Well, you are. And people don't really realize how hard that is to live that way, because that's a time in your life when you actually need the help, and you're losing your social circle. And
if I had breast cancer, people would have come over with casseroles,
right,
and meals. But to say you have Lyme disease, they say, well, can't you just take 2 weeks of antibiotics, like an ear infection, and be over with it? And it's just, no, it's not like that.
No, it's not. We have a question in chat, but, I am so appreciative of you giving us this time that we're going to be taking a bottom of the hour break, because I don't want to miss this, and I never do this. So we are tonight. But when before we get to the question, we're going to need to take the break. So it's not even a break. I'm just going to say, you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting here on, you're listening to Fate Magazine Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I appreciate you being here and your patience as I fumble around with the breaks. But thank you. And I'm really interested in this question. I knew it was going to come up. And given the environment we live in, you probably knew it was going to come up too. But Sherry says, well, then this all raises questions about COVID, too. Did they release this? And I think the general consensus is, well, I have heard a Chinese scientist speak on this here in the U.S., and the Chinese have captured her mother or taken her mother into custody because she is speaking out here in the U.S. about this being a weaponized virus that, was intentionally released. And so would it be the same thing? I mean, if it were something that the Chinese said was in monkeys and bats and things of that nature, then it's still a transmissible disease that if they chose to do it, right?
I've thought about this a lot because that's the thought process I had to go through when I heard that Willie said, oh, it's a biological weapon. So that motivated me to look into the literature that when our biosecurity people in our country see an outbreak, what do they look for to know if it's a natural infection or an unnatural infection? So I have a section, on my book that talks about, let's talk about the top 3 clues that something is an unnatural infection. Well, you have a highly unusual event with large numbers of casualties. That applied to the weird Rocky Mountain spotted fever that broke out in the late 60s on Long Island around Lyme, Connecticut. That applies to that. And it also applies to COVID. It's way larger than the seasonal flu, the mortality, the death rates. And that's clue number 2, higher sickness and death than expected. And number 3, an uncommon disease. And so I think most scientists agree that the COVID virus came from bats, but it's much more contagious than a regular flu or the SARS that came out a couple years ago.
That disappeared and hasn't been seen since, right?
Right.
I mean, they look for cases of SARS and they can't find them, which I think is very strange.
Also, a point source outbreak. That's another clue that it's unnatural. It's not, but the COVID came out in Wuhan, and the Lyme-like disease that made people sick came out in 2 spots around Lyme, Connecticut and Long Island, and then around Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I don't have any inside information, and it's hard for me to investigate the COVID thing because it's all in Chinese. I have faith that someone will get to the bottom of it, but based on my research for the book, it feels like perhaps COVID-19 escaped from the lab. I mean, we know Wuhan was working on bat viruses, so it feels like something that got out, one of the lab workers was infected and maybe went to the meat market and spread it. But I don't have any inside information, and there's a lot of fake news flying around, so I don't know if I believe that female scientist. I don't know if she's being paid by someone. It's just so hard to tell the truth right now. I can't really jump to conclusions.
Well, of course. But I just found it interesting that I have seen her twice now on varying networks, and both times with very aggressive hosts who were not very aggressive with her, but trying to get the information nonetheless. And it just kind of gives you pause because it's such an oddly behaving virus. It's like it wanes and then it rises again, and it wanes and it rises. And the only thing that I'm hearing at all as a positive is that the hospitalizations are down and the deaths appear to be getting out of the ridiculous, horrifying area. I agree that there's no good way. Anybody dying is horrible. But, Yeah, we had a question in chat that says, why do they release these biological weapons? And it's because, well, why don't you answer that?
Well, this week we had the Nobel Prize winners, and the one in medicine was the invention of CRISPR that lets us edit, cut and paste DNA segments from human DNA or any DNA. So we're entering a really new, dangerous phase where we can change the building blocks of life. And there are a lot of really, really good things we can do with that capability, like curing cancer or rare diseases that are where someone's born with a genetic flaw, and we can conceivably, especially with something like sickle cell anemia, replace one gene and fix someone who's been sick their whole life. So that's the really exciting part of it.
Yes.
But, in the case of the Wuhan, the bat virus, the Corona-19, they were working on it in the Wuhan lab. And maybe they were thinking, we want to do a nasal vaccine for the seasonal flu. And what if we tweak this other virus that spreads really easy through the nose? And that way we could attach our good virus to this invasive virus. But, there are a lot of experiments that have to go on with animals before you can test it in humans, but maybe it got out. So, that would be, maybe they had good intentions and their good intentions backfired. You could say, I am sure there's some bad countries in the world that are working on biological weapons, and this would certainly be a really good biological weapon, though it could have been more deadly than it was. I think we're sort of lucky it's only as deadly as it is, because it could be much worse. Yes. And certainly in my research in my book, for example, with Rocky Mountain fever, I looked at this scientific paper from Ohio, and just looking at the dead monkeys was horrifying.
Well, yes. Because we don't think that way. We don't think, well, let's go out and see how many things we can kill at one time. Or how many.
I know. And these biosecurity people, they spend all their time in worst case scenario meetings. And in a way, I think they get jaded and they don't think about the larger implications of what they're doing. And that's why we need more bioethicists involved in these kinds of experiments.
Absolutely.
Like one of the appalling experiments that I write about in the book is with Lone Star ticks. So you're from the South, and Lone Star ticks are very aggressive, man-biting. They have eyes so they can swarm and stalk their prey.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, and so at some time the military decided, well, that might be a really good, since it's so aggressive and very hardy, it can survive underwater for 70 days.
70 days?
In a freezer for a long time. Oh, this would be really great to weaponize, to put bad diseases in it and drop it on our enemies. And so one of the questions is, if we drop this tick in an enemy territory, how far do the ticks travel over weeks to months? So they did an experiment with allegedly uninfected ticks in coastal Virginia, near Norfolk, Virginia. And they released hundreds and thousands of these Lone Star ticks. And they made them radioactive before they released them, so they could track how far they traveled using a Geiger counter-like device. And before this set of experiments, which was in the late 60s, there were essentially no established colonies of Lone Star ticks above the Mason-Dixon line. And after these experiments, like 2 years after they ended, Lone Stars were established on Long Island, and that's when a bunch of people started dying of Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which happens to be carried by these ticks.
Oh my goodness.
So back then there was no environmental protection agency or safety boards at the university to say, maybe we should do those tests in a closed environment before we just release them on the Atlantic bird flyway.
That's just crazy. Yeah. Our chat says, this is mind-boggling. What are they thinking? I agree with that sentiment. I'm saying the same thing all over in my head. But, who thinks this is a good idea to test in your home country? To test, period. I mean, April in chat says, Norfolk, where her husband got limes on a Navy ship. Interesting.
Yeah, and well,
because he was aboard ship when he got it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that is.
Another set of experiments that I cover are that there was a set of experiments where they put germs in live insects, but then towards the end of the 50s, they said, well, this is not feasible for deployment on a large scale. So what they started doing is just taking microbes, both bacterium and viruses, and mass producing them in vats or flasks, then freeze drying them, making them particles so that they could be sprayed over large areas. So they were sprayed from Navy ships, from buoys, from frogmen. There was a set of tests with spraying bacteria that were sort of close cousins to anthrax, which, as you know, is a pretty deadly germ. And at the time they said, well, it's a harmless bacteria, but now we know it isn't. But what they did is they mounted a sprayer on the back of trucks and went through tunnels in the Pennsylvania Turnpike and sprayed the bacterium, and then had sensors along the way, to measure how many particles per whatever were in the tunnel and how effective.
Cats.
Yeah. And they did it in the New York subway too. They filled light bulbs with live bacteria. And then when a subway train went by, someone on the street level smashed the light bulbs over the grate, and the vacuum created by the subway passing sucked the particles of bacteria throughout the whole subway. And they had like men in black with briefcases and purses and photography equipment. There were sniffers disguised as everyday items, and they scientifically collected the data. And the conclusions of the report were to the Pentagon, well, if, a Russian had done this to us, half of New York City would have been dead, if it was a deadly bacterium. So that was a feasibility study.
Oh, gosh. That is, you're blowing my mind.
I know.
The further this conversation goes, I'm just sitting, because I haven't finished the book. So, I was just like, oh, this is going to be great. And it is great. Please do not feel that I'm not appreciative of the information, but it is mind-boggling that this is what is going on. I'm going to run a 2-minute break, and if y'all will just bear with us, we will be back right after this, and it just keeps getting more interesting, right? Thank you so much for being here. We will be right back. You come back too.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad you're here. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, and thank you for doing that. I was telling you during the break about the responses that we were getting in chat. And, you know, when you and your husband were trying to get help with a diagnosis, people thought that you were mentally ill. And one of our chatters says that, you know, they know more than they want to know on this stuff and don't talk about it because, well, people find it crazy. So it's universal. That's how people that deal with this are treated, or that try to educate people with this are treated. I think that doing your Under Our Skin film and them writing Bitten took a great bit of courage on your part. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I was told by people in the biosecurity business, watch your back. So there were times I was a little nervous for my personal history. I mean, for my personal health. But I have to say, and there were times it was dark because I was describing incapacitating weapons and I had suffered from the same kind of symptoms. So it's hard to look under that rock where the answer may be, oh, you have something that's incurable because it's an engineered germ. But in the end, it's I want this information out, and this information, it came out during the nuclear weapons program, and a lot of people don't know the bug-borne weapons program and the chemical weapons program. It was almost as large as the nuclear program, the Manhattan Project, but it used the same rules of secrecy, and much of the documents on this program are still secret. So I found some, but there are so many more. And why that's important is because the government did these open air field tests on dangerous bacterium and insects stuffed with diseases. And, for example, they drop mosquitoes, the Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, the same ones that carry Zika and dengue, all in poor black communities in Georgia and Florida, so when you drop 1 million mosquitoes on those areas, do they become established, and so along with climate change and population growth, are these experiments contributing to these like biblical plague-like outbreaks of diseases that we've been seeing since the 70s?
One would assume, right?
Right. And so the thing I'm most proud of with the book is that a congressman, it's Kris Smith of New Jersey, as soon as the book came out, waved it around and said, this book is credible. If the military really did these experiments, and I think they did these and more, we need to declassify those documents and know, what germs were released where and when, and did our scientists work on cures and vaccines for those diseases for our own soldiers?
Like before they released them.
Right. So
you have to have the antidote before you release the poison. There's anybody knows that if they've ever watched any kind of, after school special or something.
Yeah. So that investigation into tick-borne diseases was inserted in 2021's Defense Department budget, and so that is on the table for voting in November or December in the Senate. And so anyone who cares about this should write to their senators and say, don't delete this investigation. It'll be relatively cheap just to hire some low-level military officer to look in the dark library where they keep all this stuff. Much cheaper than testing every tick in the U.S. to find out what's in it. Because there are like 20 really dangerous tick-borne diseases that can kill you in U.S. ticks. And wouldn't it be easier to know what was released where in the military documents than testing everything in every state?
Well, let me ask you. The Rocky Mountain spotted fever that my mother-in-law had was from a tick bite here in Alabama. I don't know that there are that many incidents of that here, but if you go through areas with the information that this was released here and that was released there, and then that one over there, that they put that there too. In the interim time period, would that not have spread? Or ticks territorial? Do they stay in the same area? Or would they just not go rampant across the country?
So the thing I've looked at is the Lone Star spread from when hundreds of thousands of ticks were released on coastal Virginia.
Right.
And it really seems like they were carried by birds mostly. Because, those migratory seabirds fly from South America past the Caribbean, up the coast of the U.S. and into Maine, and now Lone Stars are up to Maine. I mean, you can follow the CDC's tracking of the Lone Stars. And so to me, as a epidemiologist, it looks like that release is significant. And so by releasing the book, I'm hoping some scientist will think, oh, okay, I bet I can use AI and data analysis to prove if this release made a difference. I'm sure you could.
I'm sure.
I've had another friend who, he's a citizen scientist, and he studies alpha-gal, that's that red meat allergy that is spread by Lone Stars too. And his theory is a lot of the hurricanes that have been hitting Gulf states are moving these ticks northward because ticks are very light. They can be blown very easily. So that
gives one pause.
Too. I've never heard of that, but it's like, well, that could be.
That's just freaky.
I know.
Well, for that matter, you don't even need something massive like a hurricane that might actually kill them or rip them apart. But you have tornadoes that are, if you have an F1 or an F2, they're generally not that big. They're not that powerful. They're still powerful, but they're not like the 5s. And, it would be, here we have them all year long.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's always the possibility that storms do that. Absolutely. So,
I mean, one of the main takeaways that I hope people who bitten by ticks take away is that when you're bitten by a tick, there are 20, different diseases in the U.S. that can make you sick or kill you, or combinations of them can make you really sick. So if you've been bitten by a tick, know that the Lyme disease test doesn't work in the first month. But if you get the red rash, annular red rash at a tick bite, you probably have Lyme and you need to go to the doctor. If they give you a couple weeks of antibiotics and you're still sick, and about 20% of the people who are told they have Lyme and they're treated go on to get sick, you need to seriously consider you might have a tick-borne co-infection that needs a different kind of drug to cure it. So try to find someone who's experienced in treating tick-borne diseases. And I think a really good site is LymeDisease.org.
Okay.
And that's a good starting point. It just talks about, it's a checklist. If you have a tick-borne diseases, it's a quick way to figure out, is it worth going to the doctors, especially in the time of COVID where, you might think of a lot of excuses not to go to the ER.
Yes. I mean, that's a given.
Yeah.
I'm just overwhelmed by your information. I knew it was good, and I knew it was intense. And I just had no idea how much information you had gathered through your process. This is unbelievable, Kris.
I also tried to make it, not too long and a page turner. So I can
vouch for that thus far.
Yeah, and I was a science writer at Stanford, and what they drilled in our heads is like, don't bury people in the science. Try to explain it simply so people understand it, because this whole tick-borne thing, I had to pretty much learn microbiology and tick entomology. So there was a lot of information I had to deliver. So it was like a spoonful of sugar. I'm going to weave it into a good story.
Well, I will vouch for that.
Thanks.
I'm just so, I guess I'm just so overwhelmed. I knew that death from a tick bite was a possibility because of my experience. But if you were to do something such as was done back then, now, think of the numbers. I mean, just look at the numbers with COVID thus far. It's just really a very dramatic happening. And I know people think that the drama part of it is poor taste, but it is. I mean, because it's gotten everyone's attention. Everyone is afraid, other than those that just think it's a bunch of hokum. And, as a society, we're just kind of folding in on ourselves, as it were. It's awful.
Well, in a way, nobody wants to hear any more bad news about diseases. But this is about your babies, right? Yeah. Your babies are out there in the brush, in the woods, in the swishy grasses. And it's about being knowledgeable and informed more than your doctor may be at the local clinic, so you can protect them and get a second opinion if they're brushing off your concerns, because mothers know, if your kid is sick.
Yes.
So don't give up. And that's what happened with my family. Is I had all these experts with lots of degrees telling my husband and I, you don't have a physical disease. It's all in your head. And it was like, no, we were healthy our whole lives. All of a sudden we fell off into this abyss of a mysterious disease on the same day.
Yeah.
That's not mental. That is something physical.
Well, absolutely. Well, would you like to tell people how they can find your film, how they can get your book? I know Amazon, but I didn't know if perhaps you were selling them too. But can you just tell people how to reach out to you?
Yes. So you can buy films through Amazon or independent booksellers, which I always like to support in times of COVID. So if you go to HarperCollins website and type in Bitten Newby, you'll come up to my book. If you just type in Bitten, you may come up with a vampire book. This is a different Bitten. And then if you want to look at some of the images in my book from the Cold War bioweapons programs, like how they stuff diseases and ticks through glass tubes, go to my personal website, which is www.krisnewby.com. That's KrisNewby.com. And then the film, I think you can see it on Amazon, but if you just Google Under Our Skin, you can watch it from the Under Our Skin website, or I think from Amazon for free, for Prime members free.
Good.
So there are a lot of ways you can watch that, and it's an hour and a half, so you might want to do it in small doses.
Well, just with all of the scary parts, I mean, it has to be a frightening experience. I'm very pleased that you came out the other end so well. Did your husband as well?
Yes, he had a couple relapses though. I I got intravenous antibiotics earlier than he did, and he wasn't cured until he got the intravenous, because the little buggers hang out in your brain, and if you have a healthy liver, it's really hard for those antibiotics to get past the liver, because that's what your liver does. It filters out bad pharmaceuticals. I just, and it was really important that we were with people with experiences in treating tick-borne diseases, because people who are really sick have a high germ load of multiple microbes, and just treating it with a heavy-duty dose of antibiotics, you can, the little bugs are poisonous, and you can have sepsis, which is, overwhelming your immune system, or the system that clears out junk out of your blood. So you have to be careful about how you treat it if you're really sick.
Well, I appreciate that, because, I have had that kind of an infection, and they're not fun either. They are, if you develop sepsis, it's just awful. Hope I don't ever again. I have had that, and it made me sicker.
It can kill you more than the bugs will, the sepsis.
Well, it will. And, I did not anticipate the things that happened to my body. I was 6 weeks out from surgery when I had an eruption on my abdomen, and it was, from there on, it was never boring for about 6 to 8 weeks. So that's some scary stuff in its own right. And I am so thankful for your time. I sure do hope that you will come back and discuss this further at some point, because there's so much more to cover. An hour just isn't enough for this, and you put so much work into it. I would really like to make sure that people get the full benefit of your effort.
Well, I would really like to do that. So,
okay. Well, we will work something out. We will. Okay. I will. And for all of those who are listening, whether live or later in the podcast, we sure do appreciate you. You're the reason we do these shows. We try to bring you great information, such as Kris has been sharing, and guests like Tom, who is just a treasure. And if you have a topic that you want to hear about, let us know. We're easy to find. You can write info@WBHM-DB.com. And I'm going to tell you, we've got a lot happening out in our world. There's a lot of stuff that is
You're listening to WBHM
or vicious
Digital Broadcast,
or
the best in
just
paranormal
mind-blowing
talk,
as we're walking down the street.
Experience
Right?
Radio, broadcasting live
if you
out
don't
of Birmingham,
like what you're
Alabama.
seeing, change it. You have that within you. How you wake up each morning and decide to live your day is powerful. Intention is
come
powerful.
on. I'm
Be the change
Southern,
you want to
but...
see. Don't give in to the negativity. Don't let someone
That'll
make
do.
you be
Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Bug-borne diseases. There's a lot of stuff that is there to just settle our hearts.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest.
Want to be. The kind of person you want to be is all you've got to wear on your sleeve. So, thank you so much. And before we go, Kris, you have a question. It is, she'd like to know if you watched the show Monsters Inside Me and what you think of the show. That has some crazy stuff in there.
I haven't seen that. but it sounds like I should.
Right? So,
Yeah.
Monsters Inside Me. Now we're all going to go check that out. So their ratings will look good. But thank you so much, Sherry, for that question. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad you got to enjoy our 2-minute break. So, again, be the change you want to see. Go out and make your world better. Smile. They can see it through your mask. Your eyes are what light up. Share that. We will be back next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. We have Denise Pridemore tomorrow night. We have Me with Paranormal Experience on Wednesday. We have so much happening, and all for you. Join us. Good night.